happens all the time. Like you read the sentence and then you realize you're not really reading, right? Like you're kind of reading, but you're like not really reading. You're like, oh man, I gotta go back, right? I gotta actually read, understand what I just read.
Hello and welcome everybody. Welcome back to our 7Sage podcast. It's such a pleasure to have you. I'm Zishan. That's Henry. Today's topic is quite exciting. We're titling it The 170 Brain. What's up, Henry?
Wow. Oh, I was just saying it's thrilling. It's thrilling, the topic.
It is thrilling. Yeah. The 170 Brain. Basically, what you need to know what you need to know to get a 170 on the LSAT. What mindset you need to be in. Henry, you want to start us off?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of talk about the more like minute levels of the 170 brain, and then maybe a little more like a macro level. And so something we mentioned in the 180 brain, I believe at least, is like how conditional reasoning needs to be locked in. And so that's true of the 170 brain. Like I don't actually think that that's a really big distinction between 170 and 180. Now, I think maybe this distinction you could draw is that like a 170 person should always be prepared and know that they will be able to translate every conditional. Maybe it takes a little bit of work to do.
Yeah.
But they have a plan. Like they know, all right, I've seen this before. This is my plan when I do this before, when I've done it before. I've seen this word before. I know to do that. And so they're very good at diagramming. Maybe they are not all the way there yet when it comes just like intuitively knowing what the conditional is, but they've got a plan, right? Yeah. Whereas I think when we're thinking about like 160s is they might know about certain group indicators or they know of the word, but it's like more of an active process then, right? Where it's like, okay, I see only if, well, I remember backwards. What is the only if supposed to be? Oh, that's group 2. That's necessary.
Yeah.
Right. Where that's messy, right? A 170 score is going to look at the only if and say, all right, everything after the only if is necessary. Done. Right. I've done that before. Does that kind of resonate with you?
It does.
What you've seen with 170 scores?
I can issue maybe a little quiz to our listeners at home. Translate these words on paper, write it out. Like, here's one. You won't get a high score unless you study conditional reasoning. How about that? Can you do that? Can you translate that unless intuitively and draw your arrows correctly? Nobody who doesn't study conditional reasoning gets a high score, right? Can you translate the nobody? Can you translate the unless? It's not just the ifs and the thens. The ifs and thens are great for the 160 score, but it's also the other ones, the more complex, the alls, the nones, the unless, etc. So yes, Henry, I totally agree. That resonates with me. You just got to be not thinking twice about how to translate a conditional. That should be pretty much automatic so that you can play around with your conditional reasoning and get to the answer choices and eliminate anything that doesn't make sense. Any conditional reasoning question, you should never be tied between two answer choices. Those should feel very formulaic, mathematical, like I'm locked in here. There's nothing.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think the conditional reasoning component, it's pretty similar between the 170 and the 180. I guess we could also talk about some of these other like more minute skills, which is like, recognizing the question type you're in and the general trope of a question type, right? So things like sufficient assumption, obviously being good at conditional reasoning, that's going to apply there. So you recognize you're in a sufficient assumption question and you go in with a bit of a plan. Like you're already keyed up into thinking, okay, yeah, sufficient assumption question. I'm looking for premise to premise gaps, premise to conclusion gaps, et cetera, et cetera.
Yes.
Strengthening and weakening questions, causal reasoning, right? Like phenomenon hypothesis. Right. So you're actively looking like, okay, right. Do I have a phenomenon? Do I have a hypothesis? Maybe I'm thinking about alternative explanations. And I guess there's some more minute detail. I mean, should we go into the alternative explanation component? Is that worth?
Well, I was going to say, just to your point, there's basic skills that lie underneath all these question types that I think should be really dialed in, which I think is maybe I would call argument parts. We talked about this on one of our previous episodes, which was called, I think, LSAT by the numbers. If you look at the data set that we have on what question types occur most commonly, you have flaw questions. You get 4 of those pretty much per LSAT section. And then you get almost 3 necessary assumptions, 2 strengthened, 2 weakens, 1.5 sufficient assumptions, an argument part, a parallel reasoning, etc. You throw all those together And suddenly half the LR section is just, can you identify conclusions, premises, and gaps, like you were
Mm,
saying?
yeah.
And so if your argument analyzing skills are strong, you're going to pick up a lot of points. And if they're weak at all, you're going to miss a lot of points. It's almost like you can go from missing a lot to getting a lot right. You can do huge jumps by just learning kind of what is really one overarching skill.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised if someone who maybe is in the 150s or low 160s makes a huge jump to the 170s just by getting better at identifying argument parts and nailing their conditional reasoning. You will make huge jump, no promises, but I mean, that's the secret to a 20, 30 point jump, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Efficiently breaking down the premise, the conclusion, and then looking for the issues. And if you can do that, that'd be great, right? That's great. I guess other things to add too. It's like when it comes to flaw questions, there are some specific tropes in flaw questions, and maybe this is a lead in, and we'll talk a little bit more about
Yeah,
this
you
when
were
we get to
saying this. Sorry, I
vibes.
cut you off before you got
No,
to
no,
that
no,
point,
no
but go
worries.
ahead.
But
Yeah.
I was no, it's entirely. But you're entirely right in that, like, if you hit the biggest question types, a lot of them do the same thing, and then you're supposed to do something different. Like the issue is the same, but what you do with that issue is different, um, depending on the question. And so, like, strengthening, weakening, you have, like, correlation, causation. Maybe there's an alternative explanation that you eliminate or you introduce, depending on whether you're strengthening or weakening. That's
Right.
like a more specific skill that you can work on to improve. Same with flaw questions, right? Where a lot of people have issues with presumes without justification, assumes without warrant, et cetera, et cetera. Where those are just like necessary assumption answer choices, right? So you know, like, oh, I see that this should be a necessary assumption. Is it a necessary assumption? Well, no, it's not a necessary assumption because I've worked on negating. I know how to negate an answer choice.
Yeah.
And so that's just also another layer there of 170 scores where they know, like, certain tropes
Yes.
in a particular question type based on the argument parts, right? It's like,
Right.
okay, based on the piece of this argument, this is a trope. I know what I'm going to be doing here. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think those are some of the hard skills. Are there any other hard skills that you feel like 170 scores have?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just to summarize what you were saying, it sounds like what you're prescribing is for every question type you encounter, you should have a protocol, right? Like, I've seen a
Yeah,
necessary assumption before, or I've seen a flaw question before. This is my path towards getting it right. I'm going to identify my conclusion, my premise, the common type, the common trope flaw that it is, and then I'm going to look for a way to capture that in the answer choice. So you have a protocol. In terms of other hard skills, I think maybe the last one that comes to mind that I hear a lot of my students talking about is, like, a lot of people say, I didn't get this right time, but I got it right in blind review. The next hard skill is maybe assessing what goes wrong between the timed versus blind review. Are you missing a
mm,
word? Are you reading something incorrectly? Is something going over your head? Are you panicking? Maybe we're kind of getting into the realm of soft skills.
yeah,
But just that sort of, like, actually reading the words and not missing any words, and kind of bringing the attention that you bring during blind review to the timed parts of the test. That's, I think, maybe the last thing. But I guess, is that soft? Would you call it soft?
maybe that's like a soft. Soft. It's a little bit more generalizable.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm hearing you, and this is a big. A lot of times when people get, they get it right in blind review, but they don't get it wrong, but they don't get it wrong, but they get it wrong under timed. Is
Yeah.
that they're spending way too much time on the wrong answers. And
Right.
so maybe they are picking apart an answer choice and realizing that it's wrong, but they don't really have a good method as to sussing out that this is an answer that's probably wrong to begin with quickly. And maybe you could reduce this down to vibes. Now, I think a 160 score, right, it might look at an answer choice. Let's just say we're in necessary assumption. A trope is that you don't pick strong answers in necessary assumption because quote unquote, stronger things tend not to be necessary. Is it necessary for all people, right, to like pizza? I don't know, right? But maybe some people liking pizza, that could be much more necessary. So people will say, oh, the vibes of this answer choice are off because it's like too strong or too weak, or maybe it's bringing in a new idea. And actually, I saw that in my class today too. This was not a necessary assumption question, but it was like a weakening question, and it revolved around doing an astronomy like an astronomy lab on
Okay.
a
You gotta
mountain,
love the
right?
LSAT
And
topics.
right, yeah, exactly. It's an astronomy lab on a mountain, and then the mountain. The question is, it's not going to be harmful for the wildlife there. And then
Okay.
people were maybe noticing, so they would like look at the details of the answer choice. And they, oh, well, actually, like this answer choice seems to be talking about other mountains, or this answer choice seems to be a little too strong or weak, et cetera, et cetera. Right, and that's fine. That's fine. Your 160 score, you can like really go into the minutia of it. But I think like a 170 score might look at it in an answer choice and just recognize that the answer choice itself, we were in a weakening question, and the answer choice itself just seemed favorable for the author. Right, like the author, the answer choice in question said, like, well, all the hikers that would be replaced by this astronomy center could just go to another mountain. Right now, of course, when you look at this, like, it doesn't actually matter. It's kind of irrelevant whether or not the other mountain hikers can go to the other mountain, because it was just about whether this astronomy center would be harmful to the environment. But right, if you think about the author's position, the author would be that much happier, right, if the
Yeah.
hikers that were replaced could just go somewhere else.
Right.
And so you don't even really need to think about the minutia of that answer choice. You can just merely look like, well, on a surface glance, this seems favorable for the author. Let's not even think about this,
Right.
because I'm
Right.
I'm here to weaken, right? And I
Right.
think that's
Right.
like a more holistic, or not holistic. I don't know. That's a general approach that I tend to see. It's like, oh, this is irrelevant, right? But to figure out that it's irrelevant in the first place is hard, right? Instead, just look like this seems favorable, right? This seems
Yeah.
favorable,
Right.
and we're in a weakening question. Okay,
Right.
skip it.
Right.
Does that
Right.
make sense?
It does. It does. It kind of reminds me of like when you're doing a flaw question, for example. Sometimes an answer choice literally just repeats a detail of the stimulus. So it's like
Mhm.
you don't have to question whether this is the flaw or whether this gets at correlation, causation, or whatever. It's just like we're looking for a flaw, and now you've just repeated something we already know. So cross that out. No need to
Yes.
assess what that answer choice is trying to get at in terms of like, I think that's kind of what you're saying is like,
Yes.
come in with a task of like, I'm trying to strengthen, I'm trying to weaken, I'm trying to find a flaw. And before you spend a bunch of time working through what this answer choice may or may not be doing, uh, just figure out whether it's even overall in like headed in the right direction. Like if you're doing a weekend question, if something seems favorable to the author's point, get that thing out of there. Yeah, exactly. I,
Yes.
I totally get what you're saying. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's funny. I mean, I also think this happens a lot of times where you might be talking about like proportions or something like that, right? And there's
yeah.
like a mathy answer, and then the mathy answer revolves around like an increasing percentage. And
Mm,
then an answer choice talks about an absolute number and how the absolute number is going down. Now,
right,
of course, absolute numbers and increasing percentage, those are irrelevant, but like
right,
we're talking about an increasing number, right? And the answer is talking about a decreasing number. It's irrelevant then, right? So you
right,
toss it. Things like
right.
that I think are helpful. Yeah. So I guess
So
it's
you would
a
say a
soft skill.
170 score has enough familiarity with with how relevant an answer choice can be, so that they can eliminate wrong answers more
Right.
quickly. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Of course, to be a 170, you have to be the 160 scorer who's really trying to flesh out every answer choice to begin with.
right,
But at a certain point, you have to recognize that this is a time test. We can't be fleshing out every answer choice in all of its detail,
yeah.
right, in
In
order
your
to
review,
do this right.
yes, but under time
Yes.
conditions, be ruthless. Like I would be the type of person. I don't know if Henry, you were like this, but I got to a point where I was very quickly eliminating all five answer choices. you know,
Yeah.
and then I'd have to go back and say, okay, I was a little too ruthless on one of these.
Mhm.
But that's
Yeah.
maybe where you want to err in the direction of being more ruthless rather than being so generous to every answer choice.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and I think at some point too, maybe this is a little bit more of a distinction between like the 170 score and the 180 score, where like there's some good general rules to have, but then there's also instances where arguments break those general rules,
yeah,
right? Or not arguments, excuse me, problems break those general rules.
yeah.
Like one of the general rules I had for myself is that like many basically means some or one, and like
Mm,
it's usually a trap answer. Of course,
yeah,
there's a ton of right answers with the word many, and you just have to recognize that, yeah, like maybe sometimes many is okay, right? Sometimes many is okay. You're looking for the best of the five, not necessarily the most ideal answer,
yeah.
and so that's a little bit more like 170 versus 180 score. But I guess you could say that's a bad thing about the 170 score is sometimes they hold the rules a little bit too closely to heart, you know?
Yeah, it's almost like you have to go through like say you're in the 150s or 160s, those of you watching at home. You have to go through the process of learning the rules and the tropes and the patterns of the test meticulously. And once you've built your repository, then you can feel free to break them and play with them. But you can't break them and play with them before you learn that. So it's a maybe a grueling path towards getting there. But once you get
Yeah.
there, it can kind of be fun because then there's nothing they can throw at you that'll destabilize you. You can just kind of play with whatever they're giving you. It almost reminds me of those memes where like you have like the bell curve meme of like the genius person and the not
Yes.
so smart person who agree, and then there's the guy in the
Yeah.
middle who's angry and takes the dissenting
Yeah.
view.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, that's
This
true.
is kind of like 130s, 140s, 150s scorer. Like it's all vibes. 180s scorer, it's all vibes. And in the middle, you've got the 160s and 170s folks who are like, no, there are rules and conditional reasoning and tropes and patterns and common flaw types.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
But
that's exactly right.
you have to go through to get to the other end, right?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
that's true. And I think one of the reasons why that horseshoe like bell curve thing exists is that at a certain point too, like as you approach, you're in your 170s and you're getting towards the 180s, those rules will become vibes to you. Right? Like
Yes.
you won't actually have to articulate, "Oh, this is
That's a
what I'm
great point.
doing."
Yes.
You'll just feel like you'll just feel it, right? You believe it. Where it's like conditional reasoning. It's a classic example. It's like conditional reasoning. You start off by thinking it through, and then you do the arrows. But then at a certain point, you just believe it. You just know that it works.
Yep.
It's not like a
Yep.
thing where you have to think about it. You're like, okay, the arrow points this way, sure, this is gonna work. Where
Right.
it feels like vibes.
Yeah.
Feels like vibes. It's not vibes, but it feels like vibes. But as you mentioned, the only way to do that is through this grueling process of, okay, first you learn about the rules and then you unpack every answer, but then you recognize maybe I don't need to unpack every answer. And then you realize, well, maybe some of these rules are not really rules. They're,
Mm.
guidelines, uh, guidelines. And then eventually, you hopefully you get a 180 or a very high score.
I
Yeah.
hope everybody
What,
listening gets a 180. Yeah.
not me. No,
Yeah.
I got a 177, so I hope
Same.
you guys get a 176.
Right,
But yeah,
right.
all
Yeah,
right.
fair. Yeah. Henry, I want to pick your brain on another thing. Okay, what about RC? I get the question a lot. Hey, I'm learning LR. LR is starting to make sense. I'm doing quite well in LR, maybe even 170s level to LR sections. My RC is struggling. What do
Mm.
you say? I've talked to multiple people now who are like going -2, -3, -1 in LR. The RC is still in the -5, -6. It's variable, right? I think a lot of people have this
Yeah.
problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think 170 scores are going to be much more comfortable with one getting questions wrong in RC, right?
Right.
So if it's just natural to get more questions wrong in RC, and but how that presents itself is they are more comfortable either skipping an answer choice
Mm,
or not answer a question
yeah.
or being okay with being okay with an answer choice rather than being okay with being an amazing with an answer choice. Right? LR, you know, it's almost always you should feel pretty 100%. Like at the end goal
Right.
is to feel basically 100% on every answer choice,
Right.
maybe
Right.
95%. In RC, if you really want to get a good score, you are probably going to have to be okay with like, I'm 65% sure this is good and it's answer choice D. I probably should keep on moving here. But I'll come back to this if I've got
Yes.
time at the end, but let's
Yes.
not let
Keep
this
moving.
one. Yeah, exactly. Uh, movement is key, right? I think that's a big thing with like 170 scores is they will continue moving through an RC passage and well, not an RC question passage. They'll hang out for a little bit longer. But I think that's a soft. I mean, that's just a soft skill. It's hard. It's hard to know when you want to move and when it might be worth it just to hang out a little bit longer. You know?
Yeah.
How do you decide? Do you decide?
Yeah. I mean, I was going to say, like, I'm sure we're not the first people to say this, but you don't have to answer every single question on the test to get a 170. You should know that.
Hmm.
Uh, and
Yeah.
also, yeah, like, I think maybe it was one of our earlier episodes with Bailey. She was saying something like, if you're gonna be wrong, like be wrong fast, you know,
Yeah.
and like go pick up the easier point. Like I think anytime I had to read a question stem twice, I would skip and move on. You know, anytime I felt
Mm,
myself even the slightest bit getting a little hung up and not answering it smoothly, I would skip and come back.
yeah.
Only because I wanted to keep my momentum and I wanted to prove to myself that I got every easy question I could, right? So that there were no questions left
Yeah.
over at the end that were like easier that I didn't get to because I sunk time into something hard earlier
Yeah.
on. So go pick up the easy points. That would be my advice. I would say, at least for me, maybe I was a little extreme. Anytime I got even a little bit stuck, I was skipping. You know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's extreme.
Yeah.
I think for me, I was much less of a skipper personally.
Okay. Okay.
I skipped, but it wasn't a real. It was like, okay, this is tough.
Yeah.
Let me do a surface level glance at all these.
Mm,
Let me go with the one that feels best, and then I flag it and come back.
sure.
That was like my own personal strategy. It's kind of like skipping, but just with the added like layer where, all right, I like this one enough on first 30-second glance.
Yes.
I'll circle it. That was mostly just so I could avoid a world where like I ran out of time and then I couldn't like click backwards and circle A for
Right.
everything.
Right.
I just wanted to
Have
have like a
something
little bit of
clicked. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly right. Have something clicked, a thing clicked. Yeah, and but a lot of it is just like being okay with being like only comfortable with an answer,
Mm,
and then eventually, you'll learn that that level of comfort is usually a sign that it's actually much more likely to be right than you really imagine it. But it's just hard. I mean, RCs is just a tough section, as you mentioned. I think a
yeah.
170 score is going to be okay with like, yeah, like I'm getting -5 in RC. That's not awful, right?
Yeah.
If I have a -5 in RC and I have any LR issue, I'm focusing on the LR issue, even if it's just like
Yeah.
one question, right? Or two
Right.
questions. Then I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna try to make sure I'm getting those LR questions right because there's no, I don't know, LR. There's no excuses. I almost find.
Yeah.
I find like there's some um what's a polite word for this? Ridiculous RC answer choices sometimes where I'm just like, I don't know. Like to me, it feels
Yeah.
outside the bounds of like totally reasonable. Whereas LR, I found everything's pretty reasonable.
Yeah, I think definitely LR may be easier to master. RC will play these games with you where they will refer to a detail in a passage. Every answer choice should be supported directly by the text, but whatever that support is might be buried in such a way that it's very difficult to flip back and find it or to even know where to look for it. I was just preparing an RC passage today for class that pulled that on me, where it was like, which of the following would the author agree with? And I had to find some obscure line that the author said something that demonstrated the author's general disposition and then apply it to
Yeah.
that question, which is not an impossible task, but certainly an annoying one. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I know. It's yeah, it's just like one of those things where it's just like it's just mechanically so complex and I find it like it's just a little bit ridiculous. There's another one too where that one's like a very mechanically complex, but there's another one where it's based on the information on the passage. I don't know if you've done this one
Mm,
where it says like which of the following is like a most reasonable inference, and you're like, okay, interesting. What's
yeah.
the most reasonable inference? And the first answer choice, it looks really good based on what they've said. It's about like book printing, where
Mm,
it's like the need for warehousing is going to move to paper instead of books. And you're like, yeah, this
mm.
is reasonable because we're not going to be where I mean, that whole passage is we're going to print books at the point of sale. But then one of the lines says we are going to dispense with the need for warehousing at all. And so you have to like make a judgment call there where you're like, okay, but this says you don't need warehouse. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't
How
need
extreme
warehousing.
to go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Right. Where I think like no LR question would ever let that slide. Right, like they would never let it would never. I don't think an LR question would ever say like you dispense with the need for warehousing because like if they say that in an LR, they mean it. There's no warehousing at all. Whereas in RC, you kind of have to do a little reading between the lines sometimes and be
Mm,
like, okay, like when they say dispense with the need for warehouse, they clearly mean in this context for books.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah. 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 RC is tough, folks. You heard it from us. We're LSAT experts, and we've taught the test. Some of us for multiple years, and we're still saying RC is tough. And so just don't
Yeah.
be discouraged, and know that like you can get minus. I mean, theoretically, you could go -7 on RC, and if you pull -0s in LR, you're still a 170 scorer. So
Yeah.
not to say don't study RC, just know that it's hard and you can get better. And if you don't do great every single time, you are in good company. Yeah.
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 Yeah. It's less that now I'm like, I feel like we have to defend RC teaching a little bit. It's like
Yeah.
RC, it's just
Please.
harder to improve on because, as you said, it's so general. And any given passage has certain questions that may or may not be similar to the next passage in the next passage. And so if you want to work on a specific question type, you have to read the entire passage and maybe you
Right.
only get one of those questions that does it. Right. Whereas LR, you can just do 5 of them, bang out 5 of them in a row.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, which is
Any
why
other
I
soft
think
skills?
generally
Go
we
ahead. Sorry.
prescribe. No, sorry, I was just going to say, which because you can't focus on question types specifically, that's why we generally prescribe most of the stuff we prescribe to improve in RC is reading based stuff. It's not question strategies. It's like, how can you understand and digest the passage better so you're better prepared for the questions, rather than like we almost never prescribe tricks like for getting the questions right. Would you agree with that, Henry? It's
Yeah.
like all the stuff we teach is like how to read better. That's how you get better at
Yeah.
RC, not like optimizing for like an inference question and finding a strategy for
Yeah.
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Ours, that's exactly right. It's you just have to read better, and reading better is tough. It's
Yeah.
it's really annoying to retool
But
your
doable.
reading.
Oh,
It
doable
is
though.
doable.
Yeah.
It is doable. And you just need to really make sure your mind doesn't wander. It's kind of like meditation, like,
Yeah.
when you meditate ever, right? And you're like, you're supposed to, you're like, you want to like, you're trying to attend to your thoughts. And then you just realize that you're thinking all the time out of nowhere. And you're like, oh
Mm,
crap. And then you got to recenter yourself. It's the same thing with RC where it's like, I don't know. I think this happens all the time.
mm.
Like you read the sentence and then you realize you're not really reading, right? Like you're kind of
Right.
reading, but you're like not really reading. You're like, oh man, I gotta go back, right? I gotta
Yeah.
actually read, understand what I just read. Yeah, I don't know. That's
It's
a lot of
beautifully
it,
said,
though.
Henry. It's beautifully said. I think that's maybe our closing remark is like what you need to score 170 on the LSAT is a meditation mindset.
Yes, introspective, maybe. No,
Introspective.
or
Yes.
is that meditating? Yeah,
Yeah,
introspective.
sure.
Yeah.
Meditation can involve introspection. You need to be able to see where your thoughts are going awry and reel them
Mm.
in, and then
Yes.
focus on your task, right? That's kind of our thesis for the whole episode.
Yeah. Focus on your task. Reel in your thoughts. Vibes can be
Vibes
okay.
and just, and keep diagnosing the weaknesses and drilling them.
Right.
We haven't said drill baby drill in this episode yet. I think it's worth
No, but
closing on. Yeah.
yeah, you have to drill, baby, drill. It's always drill, always drill.
Yeah.
Not always, but try to drill.
Try to
It's
drill.
not as fun as a
Right.
PT, but it's much more useful. It
Yeah.
can be as fun as PT. I loved drilling when I was
Yeah.
studying. Did you like drilling? I mean, I don't
I
know.
like drilling more than taking practice tests. I'll tell you that. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I much prefer just opening up a 5-10 question drill and giving it my all versus sitting through a couple hour exam. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ugh, exams.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess we'll leave it. I know it's crazy. It's funny. It's funny how like my dislike of it, like thinking about sitting for an exam, but it's like our entire world. I don't know.
Yeah.
Now I'm speaking about introspection and reflectiveness. I'm just sort of reflecting on myself, and I'm like, huh, interesting. What do
Well,
we do to what have we done to ourselves here?
yeah, I guess we can tell the viewers like it does get better. Like you will do this exam, it'll be over one day, and then you can be like me and Henry, where you get to just talk about it, as if it's this thing in the past, and you get to still hate taking tests. You don't have to change who you are to do better at this test. Just get through it, and then you can be like, be like us, where we still hate taking
Yeah,
tests.
yeah,
Even though
yeah,
we teach a test.
exactly.
Yeah.
Make it so it's not really, doesn't feel like a test. You can still hate taking tests, but eventually you'll get to the point where you'll look at the LSAT. It's barely a test, right? It's
Right.
just
It's a game. It's a
just
sport.
something you can do. It's a game.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
A blood sport. All right. Well, like and subscribe. Leave a comment. We'll answer questions.
If we pick your question, you get a free month of live subscription. So please send us some.
Please do. We love questions. I guess goodbye.
Goodbye.
That was a terrible sign off. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know what I'm doing today. I'm off. Peace. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.